Welcome to the HVAC Financial Freedom Podcast, a show where we talk about HVAC business ownership and financial freedom by sharing stories and advice of experts who can help you get there. Now your host, John Victoria.
Hello and welcome, HVAC Financial Freedom. This is John Victoria here with the HVAC Financial Freedom Podcast, and I am here with the incredible Scott Bell of Elk Grove, California. And if you are unfamiliar with him, just want to give you a quick background into his story. Currently, he is the Director of Program Training at Abraham University. If you're familiar with Jay Abraham, big name. He's also the founder of Aries 711 LLC, based in Sacramento, California. Actually, just got back from Sacramento, but it is a marketing and training organization. He's also a fellow podcast host at the How to Sell Show, as well as a former sales trainer at Gilmore Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing, and a former comfort advisor at Bell Brothers. Welcome, Scott. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Super excited. Just to kick things off, we have only, we don't know how much time we have today, but I just want to dive right in because for those of the people that don't know your story, I want them to understand it. So I want to know the real Scott Bell. What's your story? Like, how'd you get started in sales training?
So we're going to have to go backwards to the year 2000. We're going to have to go like the Wayback Machine. And I got started in insurance sales and I sucked. I was like the 10th worst person on the planet. Like it didn't work out very well. So my dad owned a pest control company. So I went back to doing pest control, and my uncles had a heating and air conditioning company in the same building. And so my uncles came to me and they said, "Hey, do you want to try doing heating and air sales?" Sure. Why not? I'll try it. So my first full year was 2002 to 2003. And back in the day, it was a big deal in 2002 to 2003 to actually hit $1 million in revenue, sold revenue, because systems were $4,000 and $5,000. Now they're 15, 20, 25, depending upon where you live here in California. I mean, that's pretty normal.
Oh yeah.
So I want to say 2006, 2007, they came to me and they said, "Hey, Scott, it's easier for us to get," the owners of the company, the owners of the heating and air company came to me and said, "It's easier for us to acquire leads as a tune-up than it is to acquire leads for a new system." And so I went from being a comfort advisor to being a technician. So I got sent to Arkansas for 2 weeks, crash course in heating and air. I've always worked on cars. So, I mean, it was just working with equipment. And so from 2007 to 2010, I was a technician. But during 2007 to 2010, I was training technicians for communication skills. And I trained this guy named Christopher Shaw. And in the Airtime 500 world, I want to say Chris was the top tech 10 years in a row from that 2007, 2008 to 2016. He was the top technician. And so figured out from reading tons of books on sales and psychology and business and body language and decision-making, how can I help technicians sell better? And I did. So that's my background. That's my story.
That's awesome. And I guess if we were to do a quick, let's say we met at a networking event, quick 60-second pitch, how would you describe, who do you help and how do you help them?
Yeah, I help technicians know how to sell better, get the homeowner engaged in ways that most people don't do because it's completely counterintuitive. It uses zero pressure. And it's all on the consumer. It's all on the homeowner. So, if there was a company that I could help, it's usually a company with 10 or 12 technicians that are out there selling, typically above that $8-10 million range and above.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess let's say that, I was that company owner. How would you, what would that process look like? So would it, how do you help people more tactically? Would it be you go into their sales organization and then you help train them up in certain ways? What does that day-to-day look like when you're helping them?
So what I've done is companies will have me come out and work with teams for a couple of days and get the teams trained and then some ongoing training afterwards. So It's not just like, here, set it and forget it.
Yeah.
One of the biggest mistakes that I'm going to tell anybody who's watching this, and I don't care if you do plumbing, I don't care if you do heating and air. At one point, I was in charge of training over 220 employees. So like I did this daily. And I would go round and round with ops managers saying, we don't have the money to train technicians. We don't have the money to train, the plumbers. And so what would happen is it would be like ramp up, ramp down. How should go this? Ramp up, ramp down.
Yeah.
And whatever process that you use, whoever's training you decide to use upon, the thing is there's got to be consistent training. And so like people will tell me, hey, Scott, like there's the initial cost of getting it going. I'm going to say, yes, absolutely. There's always that initial cost of getting it going, but it becomes self-sustaining with the right training. It becomes self-sustaining with making sure that people are doing what they're supposed to. So can I go backwards for a second and tell you a story?
Yes, please.
When I worked with Chris Shaw, we would train every day from 6 a.m. till 7. And Chris and I would compete on who could have the shiniest shoes, who could have the tightest iron mark in the shirt, right? But we would compete to who could get to this office first. And for 4 days a week, we would practice our door approach. I would go, he would go. I would go, he would go. And we would have guys come and say, hey, we want to work with you. We want to come role play with you. You guys are crushing it. Chris's numbers are through the roof. Scott, you do pretty well. We want to come role play and practice with you. And we would role play and practice the door approach 4 days a week. And we would probably get about 15 to 20 repetitions each. And people, they did not want to believe that that's what we did. They didn't want to believe that on 4 days a week we did the door approach. On the 5th day, we did role play. And so what would happen is we would have 15 to 20 door approaches before we went to our first call, and everybody else was practicing. So we made the mornings our secret weapons. And like I've always carried that belief that like if you're really going to get somebody to be good, Monday morning training is probably going to be the best time to do it because you're starting out the week. You're starting out fresh. Like that's going to set the impetus. That's going to set the beginning of the entire week for everybody.
I love that. And yeah, for most people who are going into Mondays, they are groggy from the weekend and really just setting the right tone.
Yeah.
Especially for sales, it's going to give you the momentum to swing into the week. And I love how you focus so much on just building those good habits on a day-to-day basis. Controlling the morning, doing it day to day. I think it's something that's missed. I feel like some people think that success is this big event, but many times it's the beauty of the small moments. And I love how you built that into your sales process and development.
Eventually, one of the places that I worked, we built a school, and the technicians would start fresh. They had never been in heating and air, and they would move into the world of heating and air. And it was a mandatory thing for them to graduate that their door approach was at 100%. And like that was one of the graduating criteria. And they were told up front, like, you got to get your EPA license. You got 2 times to take it. And then you have to get 100% on your door approach. And in the beginning, they were like, really? Why? But it made them fluid because like, look, I teach body language. I teach sales. I teach persuasion. And whether we want to believe it or not, we're judged in the first 3 to 7 seconds when somebody sees us. So somebody was looking at me going, either I want to watch this episode or listen to this episode based upon the picture and the criteria and the information that was given by John, or I don't. Well, we have the same thing. You go and knock on a door, you've got between 3 and 7 seconds for someone to say, I'm either making a purchase for you for parts today for a complete system, or I'm not buying a thing from you. And sure, you can turn it around, but it usually takes heavy discounting, and it's usually not what you think that it is. So I've lost count of how many ride-alongs that I've been on. Like that was part of my role for almost 10 years was to ride with salespeople day in, day out, technicians day in, day out. So I have a different view of what actually goes down on a sales call because I'm not watching from the sales seat. I'm watching from a co-pilot seat.
Yes. I love that. And if you were to break down, like what does that look like? What does the 100% rated, show up at the door? Like, what does that look like in terms of body language, tonality, how they're dressed? Like, what does that ideal person look like?
So like, let's just go down through the uniform more than the person. Cause like I've got a round head. So like it'd be pretty hard to describe 100% perfectly.
Oh yeah.
But like here's, I will tell you this, the guys who I have found are fanatical about their own process are the ones that do the best. So I think back of Chris. Chris would polish his shoes every day. Chris would go nuts on making sure that his iron was perfect on his sleeves on his shirts. Right? They knew that image mattered. So if I was to be out in a service van today, and if I was out there and I was going to knock on the door, one, I would make sure that I'm fully prepared and that somebody recognizes that I am the person that's prepared. You know, I've practiced the door approach tens of thousands of times, maybe, you know, just going through and having that conversation over the years that I've done it. So I'll give you this. I'll tell you the people who struggle the most. The people who struggle the most are the ones that don't have any type of structure that they're working with. They fly by the seat of their pants, and I'll give you numbers. If you have somebody who flies by the seat of their pants on their door approach, they will have between a 13 and 17% closing rate on partnership plans or club memberships. They will have a subpar average ticket. And if they are meant to set leads, they don't set leads. And if by chance they do set leads, they're difficult to sell. They take heavy discounting and they're buddy deals. John, I'm your friend. You're my friend. Let's make a deal happen. For the people who do this right, they prepare before they go on the call. They'll sit in their van. And I've seen the gambit. I've seen everything you can imagine. Like I listen to opera music and I listen to classical music because I have a hearing condition. So let's just take me, for example, opera, classical music. I think about the call that I'm going on. I never believe the notes. Like if there's anything that I can help your people with, never believe the notes that are in a CRM. I don't like, it's just an indicator. The real question is, am I meeting with somebody who can make a decision? I don't care about like all the insides and the outsides. They've got home warranty. It's a rental property. None of that stuff really matters. The thing that matters is, can the person I'm meeting with make a decision? That's it. Right. Yeah. So like if in the world of sales, if you're looking for a reason to find an objection, I guarantee you're going to find 5 or 10 of them. So the best guys who go to a call or girls are going to be the people who are prepared, who can hold a conversation, build a little bit of rapport, can bring somebody back in when they get off topic, and then use a structure.
Love that. Absolutely love that. I mean, what's the quote by Abraham Lincoln? It's, you know, given 8 hours to chop down a tree, you know, I would spend 6 hours sharpening the axe and then 2 hours to cut it down. Similar thing. It's like when you meet with your customer, you're already ready with how you look, the things that they might say, how you're going to approach things. You know, if there are notes, you know, making sure that's a decision maker, but you know, anything to contextually be ready for that conversation. So it's you're not taken unaware.
Well, I'll add something else. The best guys that I've ridden with, they keep a journal. And so like when they run into something, they have good notes that they come back to and they say, under this situation, here's what I would do. And here's what they do too. Let's say, John, that you've been out in the field longer than me. They go to people and say, I ran into something weird. How do I deal with this? So they're building a mental database or a database in a book of like, here's what I do when I run into something weird or something strange. And it's funny because I talk to Chris Shaw, I don't know, once a week, twice a week. And sometimes as we're talking, I hear him pause, and I've known him long enough that he's writing notes. He still takes notes based upon conversations that him and I have, and we chuckle about it.
Love that. And do you think that's something that's like innate to somebody, someone who's a curious learner, or is this something that you can help train? Because, you know, for someone who wants to grow, you know, a big organization, you'll want to be able to pass this to your techs, not only just have it with yourself, but how do you train people to have this attitude? Is it something you can train, or is it something that you have to look for as a quality when you are procuring talent? Just, yeah.
You can train for it. You just have to find people who are open-minded. Like the second that people start giving me pushback, I'm like, look, at this stage of my life, I'm not interested in pushback. If you don't want to do what I have to say, that's fine. But at that point, they're wasting my time, their time, and company resources. Like I have a proven model. It's not something that is just created yesterday. So like I have this happen. I mean, it still happens to me. I'll go somewhere, I'll train. And guys are like, I'm not into this. I'm not interested. I want to run my own model, my own process. And I'll talk to their manager and say, tell me about their numbers. I can pretty much tell you what they are. And I write them down, I guess. And I'm usually pretty close to what they are. Occasionally I'm wrong, but it's usually a Wednesday and a full moon.
Love that. Yeah, it's the data smokes it out.
Yeah.
The data smokes it out. Numbers do not lie. I love that.
It's funny because the guys who complain the most about the numbers are usually the people who are in the bottom or the middle of the pack. The people who are at the top, they don't care. It's like they keep their own score. They know their own numbers.
Yes.
I just got to let you know too, like I don't have a filter. So I tend to hurt people's feelings by answering some of the questions that you ask me.
Nah, I'm sure everyone who's watching, I myself as well, no harm, no foul. I'm totally fine. That's amazing. So I guess so now we've talked a little bit about the numbers. I'm curious more as to, what are some of the techniques that you would recommend? So, I know in psychology, I've read the book. I think it's Influence by Robert Cialdini. And there's, the book, 6 Triggers or the 6 Biases. For you, like, what are those, I guess, tools or those tactics that someone can use to help improve their selling? Maybe, eke it by additional 5 to 10% or anything like that. What are those tactics that someone can implement?
Okay. So one of the things that happens when you do sales training is your time speeds up. So we have a tendency when we get excited, including me, to want to speed up any sales process to get to the end, to get to the close. But since we sped up to get to the end, to get to the close, now we need to speed through the discounting. Now we need to speed through whatever's going on to make that deal happen, whether it's parts, pieces, memberships, complete units, complete systems. So I would say the difference between the technicians who close deals, set leads, sell parts and pieces are the guys and the girls that slow the process down for about 5 to 10 minutes. And it's counterintuitive because, you've got people, you got call centers that are saying, hurry up and get done. Like when I was a technician, the last thing I wanted to hear was hurry up. Like I'm in the middle of closing a deal. I'm sitting at the table and I'm getting text messages and phone calls. Like, where are you at? You've got your next call. I'm like, don't worry about me. I'm at a deal. I'm trying to set a lead. Like, I get it. There's somebody behind me. But at the same time, you want me to hit numbers, it's going to take a few extra minutes.
Yeah. Of that. Yeah, just speed, just, it can kill the relationship. You just begin to rush people. Very similarly, a metaphor I love is, let's say that you plant something, a seed in the soil, and someone thinks that, if they try to pour too much water to rush it, you're just going to kill the plant. Yeah. And so very similarly, you want to nurture that relationship. And if you rush it, you're going to end up with a lost lead or, like you said, just discounting heavily. Yeah. We're doing a buddy deal.
I would also say that like there is a point in place for sales training, but there's also a time and place for other type of training. And so conflict resolution, like if I had been out in the field for a couple of years, I'd pick up a couple of audiobooks on conflict resolution because that's what technicians and salespeople deal with. They go to a call, they sit down with a buyer, they sit down with a homeowner, and there's conflict. Like, I can't believe that this is going to be a $700 repair. I can't believe this is a $1,000 repair. I can't believe that you guys were just here 6 months ago and we didn't have this problem. So a lot of training deals with, hey, here's what you do to sell the process, which is fine. And here's what you do to overcome the objection. But what a lot of technicians and a lot of salespeople aren't prepared to do is have tough conversations and explain what a situation is and explain why there's a problem and be calm through it. There's a lot of times when I do ride-alongs, if I'm with a technician, sometimes the tech will just get frustrated and throw their hands in the air. They go, hey, Scott, can you explain this? I can't say no. I gotta know my systems. I gotta know my parts. I gotta know my pieces. And I gotta say, here's what you're up against. And here's the struggles that you're facing. And here's the situation that you're in. Here's what your options are.
Awesome. And it sounds like a lot of emotional management as well, especially in tougher situations. You get stressed, your amygdala fires up, you got fear in your eyes, and you're just going to rush things again. and how do you control your emotions in those moments? And so I think part of what you're saying is training, having a given process in place, but also maybe some place to step back mentally, like this is going to be okay. Yes, there's emotions in the moment, but we're going to get through this. We have a process, and that's, I could say, like the value of training.
This is one of the things people will call me and they'll just go, Scott, can you tell me everything's going to be okay? That's all they want to hear. They just want to hear everything's going to be okay.
I love that. So I guess transitioning, you mentioned to me earlier about lead cannibalization. What is that? And could you tell me, like, how do we solve? Is this an issue? Like, how do we solve for it? Like, what is this lead cannibalization that you mentioned to me earlier?
Yeah. So like good companies run off of numbers, and technicians and salespeople usually don't like to hear that, but it's the truth. I mean, the best people that I know that run businesses will say we're a marketing company first, and then we're a service and install or sales company second. And when I first heard that, I kind of pushed against it and said, I don't know if that's necessarily true. I don't know if I like that. But at the end of the day, in order to make a business move, you need to bring in new clients. But sometimes there's such a push to acquire sales or such a push to acquire repairs that front first visit is a cannibalization of the lead. That front first visit is sold so hard to set a new lead for a system or for parts and pieces that the next visit, the homeowner's like, look, I already know I need a new one and I'm not buying one. So it creates conflict right through the door. Like, yes, great. You have a club member or a partner who's on a plan, but you've just created a problem for the next guy. So what does the next guy do? He finds more damage. He finds more issues with the equipment. He finds more problems. And then goes, by the way, you need a new one. So by the third visit, the homeowner is like, I don't want to listen to this. I don't want to go through this. And if they do set a lead, that homeowner might come back and say, I'm going to get other bids. I'm going to talk to other people, which is fine.
Yeah.
It's just that the lead cannibalization is something that really does happen. If you're sitting with me and I'm your technician, you're never going to hear me say you need a new one. That doesn't come from me. That comes from your decision process. You're probably going to ask me, I think I probably need a new one, or sounds like I should probably take a look at getting a new one. And at the same time, I'm going to say, hey, that's up to you. That's your decision. Right? You got kids, John?
Not yet.
You have nieces and nephews?
Yes, I do.
You've seen kids playing and their parents tell them what to do?
Yep.
And the second that you tell a kid what to do, what do?
They push back. Like, I don't want to.
They say no. Like I'm 46 as of last week. Okay. So my 3-year-old brain is 43 years old. So I've gone through 43 years of telling people no when they tell me what to do. And so, sure, I can tell you what to do as an adult, but you're going to give me pushback. So the entire training process that I create is based upon that decision's got to be yours. That's on you. It's not on me.
I see. So just kind of drawing the contrast, there's the used car salesman who might push, and more of the approach you're talking about is more facilitating that decision with them. And it's not a me against you. It's more of like we're together and you're helping facilitate that sales process together with them to make a decision and what's in their best interest.
It's more collaborative. It's in like a deal is a deal. And here's one of the struggles that salespeople face is they'll look at a way a deal is done and they'll go, I wouldn't do it that way. So that's the wrong way to do it. Right. So I can sell aggressively. I can push people and I can close deals. It's not my preference. I'm more of a passive salesperson. I'm more of a conversational salesperson. At the end of the day, what way matters? It's the one that gets the results that you care about. Like, John, if I'm working for you and I close a deal passively or I close a deal aggressively, does it matter to you which way I did it?
No, numbers.
And like sometimes people, when they watch me interact with salespeople or technicians, they're like, I wouldn't do it that way. I'm like, great, then don't. If you got better numbers, then that's fine. But if the numbers aren't there, do it the way that I'm showing you.
Love that. And it reminds me of, I don't know if you've read the book. I believe it's called Dream. It's about the Dream 100. It's the
Oh,
concept of having 100 of your dream clients. And they tell a story in the book about how the consultant they brought on to implement Dream 100, he implemented it, and for the first 6 months, absolutely nothing. Month
mhm.
7, nothing. Month 8, nothing. And they were talking like, "Ah, did we hire a flub? Like, is this guy going to do anything?" Month 9, nothing. And then month 10, that's when everything just blossomed. And this guy did more sales than everyone in the entire department, but it was more of a pull approach rather than a push approach.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of it. It's many times it's not always going to be maybe the quickest or the one that where you're pushing, but it's something that you're nurturing things over time, and you keep that relationship, and it's just exponential from there. And so, yes, so you've read the book Dream 100, the Dream 100 concept.
Dream 100 concept is something that originally came from Chet Holmes.
Yeah, Chet
And
Holmes.
then,
Yeah,
and then Dana Derricks wrote a book called Dream 100 as well.
that's right. Yep.
So, yep.
Love that. Awesome. So,
I got to tell you, prior to 2012, I read just about every book that was written on sales.
what would you say is your top 3 for top sales books?
They're not going to be books on sales,
Mm.
right? So I don't. It's over on the bookshelf. Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss.
Ah, I would have never expected that book. I've actually never heard that recommendation.
7 years ago, I wrote a book review on Amazon for Green Eggs and Ham, saying this was the best sales book ever. Right, so like this isn't something I'm just saying today.
You're gonna have to explain this. Like I'm leaning in.
Okay, so like if you go through Green Eggs and Ham, it's a book that's 62 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Sam I Am, dude's a closer. He's not aggressive in the fact that he's like, you have to do it. He closes the deal by asking questions. Would you like them in a box? Would you like them with a fox? Would you like them here or there? Would you like them anywhere? Right. And it's a good reminder that sales is all about questions and stories.
I love that. Okay.
So like, think about this. You're having a bad day, right? When you're having a bad day, you pull out Green Eggs and Ham and you read that book out loud. And by the time that you're done, you're laughing.
Yeah.
I live here in Sacramento. I went to Target. Green Eggs and Ham was like $6.70. Like I have probably 14 or 15 copies of that book. Just because something happens, I'm having a bad day, I'll go buy a book, Green Eggs and Ham.
I love that.
Number 2 on that list, Start With No by Jim Camp. And chapter 1 is all about do not be needy.
Not be needy. And is that the general premise of the book as well? Just
No, it's actually a book on negotiation.
Okay. Book on negotiation.
And then book number 3 would be from my good friend and mentor, Dr. Kevin Hogan, Psychology of Persuasion.
Psychology. And what would be a quick, like 30-second, like what's that book about?
Psychology of Persuasion?
Yeah, Psychology of Persuasion.
Think about the actions that you take as an individual to make decisions in your life and what it would take to persuade you to get you to say yes.
I see. So understanding your decision-making heuristics and like how you make decisions on different things.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how we're all influenced, right? You're going to be more influenced by me in a jacket than not in a jacket.
Yeah.
That's scientifically proven. You can just go down the list and figure out where all of the elements of persuasion and what you have leverage to.
I'm sure you've read it, the Daniel Kahneman books, all of the heuristics as well of how you're impacted. We think we're making decisions, but there's things that are invisible that are impacting our decision. Then we fabricate a reason why we're doing something based off of these heuristics in our environment. And it kind of reminds me of that, like the psychology of persuasion. You can think about it, but also there's some things that you just don't even realize are impacting how you're making your decisions.
You know what's a good video to watch? It's got some vulgarity to it. So like if that's going to stop you from watching it, probably don't watch it. But there's a scene in the movie Focus from Will Smith, 2015, where they talk about psychological priming.
Mm.
And like, if you understand how priming works and how the psychology of priming works, it changes how you influence 100%.
Mm. I love that. Yeah, so I guess to tie some of these back to just like marketing in general for an HVAC company, you mentioned earlier how important it was for organizations not to just think of what they do, but think of themselves primarily as a marketing organization. So I'm curious, like, how what advice would you give to someone who is looking to stand out in a crowded market, or maybe they are a newer player and they're looking to get their name out there? Aside from the sales, what can someone do to be different than everyone else that's out there? Like, is it to do with branding? Does it have to do with doing direct outreach, cold calling? Like, how does someone begin to get known in their market?
Sure. Like, I'm gonna reference Jay Abraham because he is ultimately
Please, yeah.
my first mentor. And the cool thing about working with him weekly is getting to hear these conversations over and over again. And so what I would start with this is, when you make your own personal decision, what do you do to define trust? And I really want you to think through that. Like, what causes you to trust somebody? Because
Mm.
ultimately, at the end of the day, we can come up with all the gimmicks. We can come up with all the content that you want. We can come up with advertising that's slick. We can come up with logos. But let's start with trust. What do you do that causes trust?
Mm. I'd say, I mean, if you were to ask me the question, I'd say one thing would be consistency,
Okay.
and also having integrity. Meaning, let's say you make a promise, you keep it.
Yep.
Uh, let's say in the context of let's say you schedule an appointment with someone and you show up at their house at the time that you said. That could be one example of building, many form of trust.
Sure. Let's just go through the process. Okay. So if you're living in a marketplace that has a lot of companies, you can go to Amazon and you can see, or I'm sorry, you can go to Google and you can see all the things that somebody does that you don't like. Right? Read the reviews. Why do people not like a company? And then you don't do that.
Mhm.
It sounds simple, but like, you can create guarantees or warranties based upon what people in your marketplace don't like. Okay. So you can say, hey, look, our pricing is guaranteed. Like, maybe if everybody's complaining about pricing, which I got to tell you, that's when I worked with technicians, that complaint came up a lot because everybody thinks a $5 capacitor should cost them $7 at the door.
Yeah.
So you start with the way that you explain how your services are. Okay, so we talked about priming. We talked about the movie Focus for a second. I said that there's a scene. It's about 6 minutes. But that first interaction that somebody has with you as a client or as a customer is so powerful. How are they treated on the phones? How are they talked to? Because they're going to explain who's coming out to a home. So the best CSRs that I dealt with and dispatchers would tell homeowners, you're going to like Scott. He's a lot of fun. He's a little rough around the edges, but he's a lot of fun. You're going to like him. So that interaction planted a seed. They primed the buyer into believing that I was going to be a little bit of fun or a lot of fun, but I was also rough around the edges, so they were prepared for it. Okay. So then we go into the consistency. What was the interaction like with the homeowner? Was the technician prepared? Was the salesperson prepared? The comfort advisor prepared? I rode with a guy one time. I live here in Sacramento. Okay. And from Highway 50 and I-5 to Folsom, where Johnny Cash sang Prison Blues, is about 25 miles. And the office, we had already been driving for 15 minutes, and the sales guy goes, I don't have any contracts. I don't have any contracts. How are you a salesman and don't have contracts? He goes, you know what? We'll deal with it when I get there. So we drive to Folsom. We go to the home. The guy gives an okay presentation. Homeowner is ready to buy. The homeowner wants to buy. The homeowner's excited about buying. And sales guy goes, oh, I'm out of agreements. Why don't we just set up an appointment for tomorrow? He couldn't ever get that guy back on the schedule because the guy said, if you weren't prepared to accept my money when I was going to give it, you're not prepared to take my money or take care of me when I need you the most. Wow. Lost the deal. So like, I think in terms of not like what happens right now, what do I need to have happen 10 minutes ago? Okay. So I'll give you an example. I have 2,600 YouTube videos on sales, 2,600. Mm-hmm. When I created them, I didn't need them. Okay, I did it way before I needed them. I did it way before it was an issue or way before that I needed to have some sort of proof. I just started creating content. So like I like to think in terms of what can I do right now to prepare my client for the future.
Wow. I love that. I love that. Just being very proactive about what are those needs in the future. I love that. And that's crazy. That guy just literally talked himself out the sale, but not having the documents ready.
I was shocked, and the guy was a nice guy. He just, to say like, I'm not prepared to go to a deal, I'm not prepared to make a sale was just, I didn't get it.
And you think it's just like a motivation thing? Do you think it's just like a tactical thing, or like what's going on to like, someone's literally about to hand you money. That's like your sole goal, right? To make the sale. So like what happened there? Like what, like, was it?
It was okay. So I'll tell you what it was. So for some salespeople, as soon as they hit their monthly number, they quit. If they need $8,000 a month to live on, they will sell $8,000 of commission. Some people need $8,000 a month to live on, and they will sell $400,000 to get to wherever they need to be. It's just internal drive. This guy literally would say, "What's wrong with making $80,000 a year?"
Wow.
I'm not knocking it. That's his personal choice. But as soon as he hit whatever number he needed to in his head, he stopped selling.
And I'm curious, like, how does one reset that barometer or that cap? Personally, like the way that I've done it is I've attended different conferences, I've met different people, and they just shift my norm as to what's possible in a certain area of life. It could be fitness, it could be business, it could be sales. But you're right. Like some people just get stuck at a certain cap. And I'm curious, like, if you have any advice on someone who feels like, hey, I want to do more, but my psychology seems to be keeping me at this cap. Like, how does one break through that ceiling?
Yeah. I'm going to say pay for your own training. So like at one point, my role and responsibility included hiring people. So I had 220 employees that I had to train. I would interview frequently for installers, for salespeople, for technicians, for office staff. And I would use a similar playbook across the board. But what I found, like, if you were coming into me for an interview, John, I would flat out tell you, John, it's very nice to meet you. This is going to be the toughest interview you've ever had in your life. And I wouldn't let you build rapport with me. And I would go into town asking you questions. Right? And then one of those questions would be, John, tell me what you've done to invest in yourself.
Wow.
And, sometimes people say, hey, Scott, I don't have the money to invest, but I went to the library. I got a library book. I borrowed a neighbor's book. Like, that shows me initiative. That shows me something. Or John, tell me a time in your life where you succeeded, where you thought you were going to fail. And like when people can't come up with stuff like that, I go, and I would have told them in the interview, my biggest concern at this point is you're going to give up on me when I need you the most. If I hire you and you haven't stuck with anything and you want to do sales, my fear is you're going to give up on me when I need you the most. So like that would be for a sales role. For a technician, I might give some pushback and say, hey, look, your role and responsibility is going to be to sell items and products and services. Tell me how you feel about that. And if you don't like it, why should I continue on with this conversation?
Wow. Love it. It also reminds me of a question that I heard where someone might have had an amazing interview. At the end of the interview, the person doing the interviewing says, it was great to speak with you. You it was great talking to you, but we just don't think it'll be a good fit. And then at that moment, they want to see if the other person will push back to see if if they will. If they don't, then they failed. That's like the final test. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to really see what people do naturally, if they really believe in themselves, if they're going to push for that position.
So it's interesting you bring that up. That came from Chet Holmes as well.
Mhm.
That's where you picked that up from. But if you do enough interviews and you sit through enough people talking, there is a difference between somebody who has certainty in their voice and somebody who doesn't. So I interviewed a really nice guy and I flipped it on him. At the end of the interview, I said, "Hey, dude, at the end of the day, you sound like a really nice guy, but what I don't hear is a closer." And so he pushed back. He was like, but I am a closer. I am good at what I do. And he said it, but he didn't mean it. Now, I've said that to people like, "Hey, look, I appreciate you coming in. You've got an amazing resume, but at the end of the day, you're more of a salesperson and we're really looking for closers." And I've had people give me absolute pushback, like, "You are out of your mind. You have no idea what you're talking about. I've got proof." Like, I'm like, good.
I love that. True character comes out in those pushback moments.
Yeah, and like, here's the thing: under tension and under stress, you're going to really reveal a lot about yourself. One of the reasons that I shot so many YouTube videos was I wanted to be proficient in front of a video camera. Like, I grew up as a kid, I had a stuttering problem. I had articulation disorder. When I talked, it didn't sound right. And like, I wanted to know that if I was ever in front of a camera, it was going to be no big deal.
I love that. I it's so funny because I actually did the same thing when I was growing up. I had terrible fear of speaking in front of the class. And so what I did was very similar to you. I put a camera in front of myself and I said I would shoot a 30-minute impromptu video for the next year, and I'll review it to see how it went. And so every single day, just impromptu, and it sounded terrible in the video. Videos I never want to show anybody.
Yeah.
But I totally resonate. It's such a powerful practice because you're forced to get better. You're forced to get better just doing it day in and day out. So I love that.
The cool thing is you have ability to go to a shelf or something and pull that video off and go back and say, "This is where I was and this is where I am today." I look at my first YouTube video and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I am so embarrassed to even play this thing." And then now it's like, I don't know. You want me to pull out a video camera or a cell phone? I mean, I got two of them.
This man's smooth.
Yeah.
I love it. So I guess I want to take. I mean, as we're just wrapping things up because we're coming on the hour. What I wanted to ask you was, why do you do this all? Like, do you believe that you have a higher purpose? Like, why do you do what it is that you do? Of course, everyone has to, make money and live, but like, what's the deeper purpose for you beyond all of the tactical?
When I got started in 2001 in sales, there was no YouTube. There were no podcasts. There were no live streams. If I wanted to learn, I had to buy a book, an audio book, or go to the library or pay for training. And the hard thing was, like, I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know who to believe. And so my belief is I've left breadcrumbs because, like, I will do and say things that are completely counterintuitive that close deals. So I wanted to leave breadcrumbs for somebody to go, like, look, it shouldn't have to be this hard. And I know where you are because I've been there myself. Like, in like 2003, 2004, like, you have ups and downs in sales. And I had committed to spend $100 a month on my education. So there was a Borders Books here in town. I'd get a paycheck. I'd go spend $100. And one month my paycheck was like, I have enough money for food but I don't have enough money to go buy these books, and I don't have enough money to go buy these CDs. So I did what anybody would do. I went and bought the books. and I scraped together money and I bought food at the dollar store.
Wow.
And, for me, I look back at that time of my life and it was like, I was going to figure out a way to make it. And I know what that feels like to have that check in your hand. And you're like, I've got stuff that I got to do with this, but I made promises to myself. I got to figure out a way to make it work. And I don't ever want anybody to have to be in that position. I don't ever want somebody to have to say like, look, I'm trying to decide to figure out how to make this work, because I will tell you, there are processes in the industry that just flat out don't work. And, I've got some accolades for some pretty awesome people in my life for what I've been able to train and what I've been able to do. So for me, I know what I do works. And I know if somebody says, hey, can you help my team? Absolutely. Why would I do it? Because I know what it feels like to suck. I know what it feels like to not have the capability of making something happen when I should.
I love that. It's especially for business owners, just they have that dream inside them. They made that leap, and people don't want that dream to die inside of them. And it's suffering when it's not going the way that they want it to. Yeah. And so, and those people, if they were just equipped with the skills and the team, magic could happen. And so I love how what you're doing is connected to, breathing life into dreams, breathing life into people.
I will tell you this, that if somebody's watching and they have a team and they're like, hey, we want to hire somebody. Scott, we want to hire you. We want to hire some other guy. Fine. Training without accountability is worthless. You are wasting your money if there's zero accountability put to a training schedule. Right? If you're not watching the numbers, you're trying to grow your business, you're going to get pushback, because the guys and the girls who really need the help are the people who are going to push back and saying, why are you looking at numbers? Now, if you're too iron-handed and you're like, it's got to be this way, probably not going to be that good. On the other hand, if you're too lack about it, it's not going to be good. There's like a happy medium, and it's going to come down to the personality of whoever's watching, because I'm not you.
Got it. Love that. And we did have a question that came in from Cedric. He asked, would you recommend the door approach for someone who's trying to get their brand, business, or sale out there? So it sounds like this is more of a question, you're starting out, would you recommend this to someone just, starting out?
Look, if I was just starting out, you've got a lot more on the line because you have no proof and no record. I would say absolutely practice the door approach. But there's other things that you're going to have to do as well. And one of the best things you could do is get testimonials. One of the best things that you could do is get those reviews on Google My Business. And listen, here's what you say, Cedric. Were you happy with what I provided for you today? Play Cedric for a second, John. Yeah.
Super happy with the service.
Would you mind sharing with your friends and family what kind of service that I provided for you? Would that be okay?
Sure. Yeah, I could do that.
Do you happen to have your phone on you right now?
Yeah, I have it right here.
Can you go to Google and search for XYZ Heating and Air?
Okay.
Right. And so if we scroll over here, it's the fourth button that says reviews.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Will you click on that?
All right. Clicked.
And what would you tell your friends or family about my service?
Thought it was great. They were prompt, on time, and great value for what I paid.
You believe that I deserve 5 stars?
Yeah, 5 stars.
Great. Can you put that in the Google?
All right. Okay, 5 stars.
I mean, I helped a company go from 200 reviews 18 months ago to 1,100 this month.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. But just using that process, did I deliver value to you? Did I take care of you? And let's say that you said no. Well, what do I got to do to make it right?
Wow.
I'm dealing with a problem before it becomes a nightmare.
Yeah.
So when I had to manage teams, if I fix the problem today, it's a $10 problem. If I fix it next week, it's a $100 problem. If I fix it the week after that, it's a $1,000 problem. The further that it gets out, the more costly it's going to be.
Yep. Wow. That's amazing. It's a win-win, right? You get a review or you fix the problem on the spot, and this problem just doesn't simmer in someone's brain, and they begin to spread, oh, it's horrible working with them. They overcharged me, they were late, and it doesn't work. So love that approach.
So can I give you some insights that maybe you might not have heard?
Please, yeah.
Google does not count your reviews as valid until you have 75 to 80. If you have less than 75 or 80 reviews, they really don't even consider them.
And I think the average in the home services industry for reviews is 20 total reviews. So way below the 70.
Yeah. The way that Google looks at that is that's your friends and family.
Mm. Wow. Okay, so as we're wrapping up, I guess any last words, and also how can people get into contact with you in case they want to reach out and ask for help?
Sure. I've got a website called sellingtechnicians.com. I just had to rebuild it, had to move it over from one platform to another. It got hacked. It's free and clear and okay to go to now, or you can reach out to my office, 808-364-9906. So 808-364-9906. That's usually for something for a company or for an organization. For the role and capacity that I have right now, I don't just take on individual technicians as clients.
Gotcha. Okay, and any parting words of wisdom to the people listening?
Yeah, so as we're recording this today, it's like April 7th. Traditionally, especially like here in Sacramento, it doesn't pick up for like another 15 to 20 days. Slow down your calls by 5 or 10 minutes and see what happens. It's 5 or 10 minutes. If you're running 4 calls a day, that's going to get you 20 extra minutes on that call. But see what happens by just slowing down 5 or 10 minutes.
Awesome. Love it, Scott. So, well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate you so much. Lots of insights and takeaways for anyone who's just starting out their business or has an established team of technicians. Super excited for any takeaways that people get from this, and hopefully everyone, you can take this and grow your business. So thanks so much. Take care. And we'll see you on the next episode.